I adjusted the visitor's badge clip to my blazer as the elevator ascended through the gleaming glass tower of Anderson Technologies. It felt strange, standing here as a guest in the company that should have partly been mine. In just 20 minutes, the quarterly shareholders meeting would begin, and for the first time in 5 years, I'd be in the room where it all happened. "Hold the elevator," a voice called out behind me, too familiar to mistake. Michael stepped in, suited in Italian wool that likely cost more than my entire wardrobe. He didn't recognize me, not surprising. The last time we'd seen each other, security had escorted me out of this very building. "Thanks," he muttered, eyes glued to his phone. 15th floor, he asked without looking up. "Conference level," I said softly. "Shareholders meeting." That got his attention. He looked up, his brow furrowing as he noticed the visitor badge on my chest. "That meeting's restricted. Who are you with?" I smiled. "Nova Software Solutions." His eyes flickered with recognition and something like unease. 4 months, Anderson Technologies had been trying to uncover Nova's leadership. The software quietly running their entire infrastructure came from us, yet no one could identify who actually owned the company. "You're with Nova?" he asked, straightening his tie. "I've been trying to meet with your CEO for weeks." "I know," I said as the elevator chimed. "You were persistent." 5 years ago, I sat in my father's office on this floor, pitching a plan to modernize the company's aging systems. Fresh from MIT with a computer science degree and high honors, I believed I was ready to contribute. He didn't. "This is a serious business, Elisa," he'd said, barely skimming my proposal. "We need professionals with real experience, not hobbyists with fancy diplomas." "Dad, the systems are outdated. If we don't update..." He waved me off. "Michael and David are handling the technology roadmap. They have MBAs, business sense. You could try marketing if you really want a job here." From the hallway, my brothers watched with smug amusement. Neither could code a simple loop, but they were the chosen heirs, Dad's golden sons. That night, in a tiny apartment lit only by a desk lamp and ambition, I started coding what would become Nova Software's foundation. I lived off savings and stubbornness, building something I believed in. When it was ready, I used a friend's consulting firm to present it to Anderson Technologies under a pseudonym. They had no idea the development team was just me, running on caffeine, grit, and sleepless nights. 6 months later, Anderson's operations ran entirely on my software. I built shell companies, signed airtight NDAs, and kept my identity buried. Nova Software grew, quietly, powerfully. We took on more clients, but Anderson remained our largest. Every quarter, they paid millions for tech built by the daughter they cast aside. Now, as Michael adjusted his cuffs, checking his reflection in the elevator doors, I rested a hand in my coat pocket. The flash drive there held proof of my ownership of Nova, and a few troubling secrets I'd uncovered deep inside Anderson's systems. "The meeting's about to start," he said, as if I didn't know. "Try to keep the Nova update brief. There are more pressing matters." I trailed him into the boardroom. Nothing had changed. The same oversized portraits of my father and brothers loomed over the long conference table. The same stifling aura of old money power clung to the walls. My father sat at the head of the table, flanked by Michael and David. They were already deep in discussion, barely acknowledging the representative from Nova. Around us, shareholders and board members filtered in, familiar faces from my childhood, still seeing me as the girl who tinkered with computers. "Let's begin," my father declared. And I smiled to myself. "Yes, let's." Once everyone had taken their seats, my father cleared his throat and spoke. "First order of business, the proposed acquisition of Nova Software Solutions." I sat up straighter. That was news to me. "As you all know," David began, standing beside the screen at the front of the room, "Nova Software has become essential to our infrastructure. We've made several generous offers to acquire them, but their elusive CEO refuses to engage." Michael chimed in, smug as ever. "So we've initiated a hostile takeover through our subsidiaries. Once we gain control, we'll fully integrate Nova's systems into Anderson Technologies." I almost laughed. They weren't trying to acquire my company, they were trying to steal it, just like they tried to steal my future 5 years ago. "Any questions before we proceed to a vote?" my father asked. I raised my hand. Michael frowned, clearly irritated at the interruption. "Yes," David said curtly, "the representative from Nova has the floor." I stood slowly and removed my visitor's badge, letting it fall to the table. I'm not just a representative, I said. I'm Nova's CEO, its founder, and its majority shareholder. The room froze. But you might remember me better as the amateur programmer you kicked out 5 years ago. I let the silence sink in. David blinked, the color draining from his face. Eliza, he whispered. I walked to the front and inserted a flash drive into the laptop connected to the projector. Now, about that hostile takeover, there are some things you should probably understand before we go any further. The screens came to life, displaying a complex web of corporate holdings, licensing agreements, shell companies, and digital fingerprints. 5 years of strategic planning laid bare. Let's begin with the basics, I said, flipping to the first slide. Nova doesn't just provide your infrastructure, we are your infrastructure. Every line of code, every system update, every security patch, written by the same amateur you couldn't bother to listen to. My father finally found his voice. This is nonsense, you're bluffing. Am I? I opened a source code window. See these blocks? This is my signature, my style, my structure, taught at MIT, dismissed here. I turned to face Michael, who was now on his feet. Security, remove her. They won't come, I said calmly. Nova runs your security system, and your financials, and your internal communications. Would you like a demonstration? I typed a single command. Instantly, every screen in the room went black, except for the main display. 3 minutes, that's how long it would take me to shut down every system Anderson Technologies relies on. Because the daughter you cast out, she built your entire digital empire. David grabbed his phone. I'm calling the police. Be my guest, I said with a shrug. I have full documentation, licenses, contracts, corporate filings, everything's legal, but more importantly, I clicked to the next slide. I have proof of what you've been doing with company funds. The next display lit up with transaction records and financial trails. Several board members leaned forward, expressions hardening. Embezzlement, tax fraud, insider trading, hidden beneath layers of bad code and worse judgment. But I built your systems, I see everything. My father's voice was barely audible. What do you want? Originally, I wanted to help. I wanted to use my skills to bring our company into the future. I looked him straight in the eye. But you told me I didn't belong, that MBAs mattered more than innovation, that my degree, my passion, my vision, meant nothing. I turned to the rest of the board. You're here to vote on a hostile takeover, but there won't be one. Nova isn't for sale. In fact, I clicked to the final document on screen. Nova now owns a controlling stake in Anderson Technologies, purchased through proxies, quietly, deliberately. The room erupted in chaos. Board members shouted over one another. Michael's face went pale. My father sank back into his chair. You can't do this, Michael hissed. We're family. Were we family when you had me escorted out? When you laughed at my work? When you tried to steal what I built? I flipped through the final slides. Nova's market position, acquisitions, reach. While you were busy playing executives, I was building something bigger. Nova Software isn't just your backbone, it's the backbone of half the Fortune 500. My father stood up, his voice trembling. Come back, you can take over, be the CEO, just, don't do this. Don't what? I asked. Reveal the truth, that your company runs on technology you rejected, that your sons have been funneling money into offshore accounts. I paused. I'm not here to burn this place down, I'm here to fix it. Nova will absorb Anderson Technologies, will modernize it, rebuild it, transform it into the kind of company it should have been years ago. I let the silence hang. But there will be changes. The vote was swift and unanimous. Within the hour, Anderson Technologies officially became a subsidiary of Nova Software. My brothers were escorted out of the building, this time by the very security systems I designed. My father resigned on the spot, his statement short and unsigned. As the board members filed out, many stopping to shake my hand or offer quiet congratulations, I remained seated in what used to be my father's chair. The portraits of him and my brothers still loomed on the walls, but their time there was limited. Ms. Anderson, my assistant said, stepping into the room. She'd once been my roommate at MIT, the first person to believe in Nova, long before anyone else. The press is ready for your statement. Forbes is on the line, they want a cover story. Tell them I'll call back, I said, glancing around the room where I was once told I didn't belong. I'm busy redecorating. Over the next few months, Anderson Technologies underwent a transformation. The old leadership was replaced by actual engineers and developers, people hired for their skills, not their family ties. The embezzled funds were traced and recovered. The systems were overhauled and future-proofed. The culture, once defined by hierarchy and closed doors, was rebuilt with collaboration and transparency at its core. My brothers tried to sue, citing breach of family trust. Their case collapsed the moment I submitted documentation of their financial misconduct. Both accepted plea deals to avoid prison. My father sent emails, long, rambling ones about family, forgiveness, and second chances. I archived them, just like I'd archived every condescending dismissal he ever gave me. 1 year after the takeover, I stood in my office, not in the Anderson Tower, but in Nova's gleaming headquarters, surrounded by magazine covers and accolades. 30 under 30. Most innovative CEO. Tech Woman of the Year. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Just saw Anderson's stock hit a new all-time high. I was wrong about you, can we talk? I smiled. I remembered the day I stood in his office, full of hope and ideas, only to be told, we need professionals, Elisa, not amateur programming experiments. My reply to his message was brief. Sorry, I'm too busy running my amateur programming experiment, but feel free to buy some Nova stock, if you can afford it. Because in the end, the real win wasn't taking over Anderson Technologies. The real win was building something so powerful that their empire became just another name on my list of acquisitions. Those oversized portraits that once hung in the boardroom, gone. In their place, I mounted something else, a framed printout of the first lines of code I ever wrote for Nova Software. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "Never let anyone else define your qualifications. Success is the best revenge." Anderson Technologies still exists, but now, it's just a small cog in Nova's portfolio. I kept the name as a reminder, a lesson, a legacy. As for the systems my brothers once tried to steal, they still run on the code they called amateur. And every time they try to log into what's left of their restricted access accounts, they're greeted with a message I personally programmed. Access denied. Please contact the amateur programmer for assistance. They say success is the best revenge. I say success is just the beginning. The real satisfaction comes from watching the people who tried to erase you realize they were only a footnote in the story you wrote without them.